Chapter 80. It had been about 2 zillion years, maybe 3, since Mike Fidrich had slept through the night. Usually he got up at least twice, cranking his massive chassis out of bed and stutter-stepping slowly across the carpet into the bathroom. But at 8:20 a.m., he turned over to see his wife staring at him. Realizing he hadn't gotten up once all night long, he shook his head just a little and smiled. "Your face looks a little thinner," he heard his wife say, as he quicker than normal scooted across towards the toilet. His overnight delivery was late and loaded. Chapter 81. There wasn't a lot of midsummer hockey going on, and that made L. Rick a bit edgy. To be more precise, it annoyed a single sequence of his DNA, hidden down duodenum deep. Most of Elric's DNA was happy about summer. That one strand, though, was angered by anything and everything. The other base pairings in his gut, the adenines, guanines, and cytosines, tried their best to ignore their ornery cousin, but every family has a bad apple, and this particular thymine was theirs. This thymine was all about blood and devastation, destruction and chaos. The Baron lived inside Elric. No amount of video gaming with his friend Schaefer was going to satisfy him, but the last time he played hockey, his other buddy Schmidt ended up in the ER with a ghastly gash splitting his lip. Tonight, his other nucleotides rallied and shot their rogue cousin down. Elric hacked into the hard drive from the city-county building, looking for something, anything. An entry entitled Hope's Contract brought the Baron back up. Chapter 82. Hope's Hundo Here, read one sign with a bullseye outside the fence at Rosa Park. There were many others. It was a historic night at the stadium. Well, every night this year was a historic night. But tonight was both historic and hysteric. Deep in the heart of Texas, Hope had jacked his 99th homer of the season. Now the team was back for a homestand, and the city was going crazy. There wasn't a hotel room to be had anywhere in the city. The closest out-of-towners could find lodging was somewhere south of Flint. Everybody wanted to be in the Motor City for the momentous event. 100-home-run season was an impossibility as recently as 2003. Detroit rapper NNN held a party to celebrate the impending feat in an old warehouse off East Grand Boulevard. Known as the Tangent Gallery and Hastings Street Ballroom, the warehouse was owned by a photographer for the local paper who put on art shows, plays, and occasional celebrations. When the rapper's party drew no less than 100,000 peaceful celebrants, there was simply no place to put them all. Cars were parked as far back as the General Motors Hamtramck plant parking lot. Its shiny new solar panels had just been installed on the outskirts of the facility, and some of the glitterati from around the world started an annex party in the shade underneath all the solar panels. When that venue filled up, the crowd proceeded past the Pepsi plant and spilled over into an abandoned trench running through Pole Town near Eastern Market. Colorful graffiti was sprayed on the crumbling cement walls, and music from portable speakers echoed back and forth across the trench. A national entertainment writer wrote, "I've never seen this scene. I've never heard this heard." Martha Rivas, a city councilwoman who'd gained fame back in the Motown era, had brought along her son, an accomplished, up-and-coming rapper. His engineer, who had some cheap recording equipment in his trunk, tagged along as well. The following winter, a live album from the event called The DeQuinder Cut went platinum. The Cut, as it became known, raised an improbably large sum of money for the formerly cash-strapped city. Chapter 83. Hope's homer was the shot heard round the world. Al Jazeera broadcast the Turner Brothers play-by-play. The BBC interrupted their cricket test match scores with a live feed from Rosa Park. It was even broadcast into such remote, backwoods places as Siberia, Kathmandu, Timbuktu, and Cleveland, Ohio. Chapter 84. Nobody dunked their donuts in coffee anymore. With the advent of the designer coffee craze started by $4, it was déclassé to dunk your donuts. But Charlie and Vince didn't care much about social norms. Besides, they preferred the frozen coffee concoctions from their place named after donut dunking. They weren't fans of $4 artisanal frozen blends. Their favorite place was an old school. They used real ice cream. And it was actually in an old school. It was getting along toward game time, and the pair realized they'd been sitting in their Madison Heights donut shop for more than 3 hours talking baseball. "Let's switch things up," said Vince. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" replied Charlie. "Frozen coffees are fine up to a certain point in the day, but at some point the switch flips, and you need a good craft brew or two. Usually that happened to the guys sometime around 7:05 p.m. on the nights when there was a game on. And that was pretty much every night during the summer." Chapter 85. £5 per win and $1 million? Exclaimed Elric. To the unmitigated annoyance of the single Red Baron gene in his gut, thoughts of investigating the mayor evaporated in an instant. Chapter 86. In the cool darkness of the inn place, Dory and Lori couldn't stop hammering Venus with questions about her time with Palmer. They hadn't seen the leader of their group as much as they would have liked. She kept in contact, of course, via email, texting, and the news group, but having her right there, sitting in the booth like old times, was a special treat. Dory couldn't stop spouting Willie's numbers from his playing days. She even knew stats that hadn't been invented during his glory years on the field. Her favorite was his ballistic statistic, the mean length of all his home runs. At the next booth over, Vince and Charlie laughed a little too loudly. That, of course, was the stat that they had invented and embedded in one of their most popular programs. "Is something we said funny to you two gentlemen?" asked Lori. Chapter 87. "How did you get this number, Elric?" "Come on, Mrs. Fidrich, I'm a journalist. That's my job." "Does anyone else have it, son?" she asked, not condescendingly, but in a more motherly way. Taken a bit aback, and to the further rage of his lone wolf thiamine nucleobase, he felt an instant softening. No, Mrs. Fidrich, just me. Do you mind if I ask you and your husband a few questions about Hope?" To Elric's further shock and awe, she answered, "Sure, when's convenient for you?" Chapter 88. Detroit's degradation had been well documented over the years. Everybody was tired of the international attention it got as a shrinking Rust Belt city. That's one of the reasons Greg chose the mostly neglected Corktown neighborhood for his first restaurant, the Deli. In this joint venture with Bald Mikey, he picked the worst place he could find downtown. Or maybe it was the best. An old Flatiron building had sat for a generation with no occupants and no prospects. It looked like a castle that had gotten scrunched at one end to form a rounded triangle. Sorting through the mountain of paperwork housed in no less than 3 different departments spread across the city, the pair found out they could get the building for an insanely low price. "Whoa," said Mikey, looking at his umpteenth faded yellow document. "This place has a lofty name. It's listed as the Grand Army of the Republic Building." Lofty, said Craig. An owner who preferred to remain anonymous was seemingly quite willing to sell, but it came with one odd proviso. The buyer had to sign an ironclad agreement not to destroy the building, but to renovate it instead. They stared at each other in almost utter disbelief. Of course they were going to renovate it. They were rehab addicts. That was the whole point. But sure, okay. They'd promised to do this so in writing. Where do we sign? Mikey and Mudgie's collaboration wasn't going to be ready by the end of September. But if they kept up their torrid pace, it may just be ready if the Bengals made it to the World Series. Who were they kidding? Of course the Bengals were going to the World Series. In order to finance their endeavor and put it on the fast track, Bald Mikey cut a deal with 2 different fledgling cable networks, the Cooking Channel and the Building Network. Both outlets would be given an all-access pass to film the progress of the new, hip eatery. Cameras would be omnipresent in Greg and Mike's lives day and night until their joint opened to the public. They also would be taking lots of B-roll around the city, showing its splendor to the rest of the country. Cleveland would be so jealous.